The morning bell echoed across the school courtyard as students rushed through the gates with laughter and energy. But for Lani, every step toward the classroom felt like walking into a battlefield. She clutched her worn-out backpack tightly against her chest, hoping somehow it would shield her from the eyes that always seemed to look for her. From the corner of the hallway, a familiar sneer broke the murmur of chatter. "There she is again," said Clara, the leader of the popular girls, her voice dripping with cruelty. Her friends giggled, pointing at Lani's shoes that were slightly torn at the edges. "I swear she must have found those in the trash." The laughter grew louder. Lani kept walking, her eyes fixed on the floor. Her heart pounded, as if each beat would betray her feelings. She wanted to scream, to fight back, but the words never came. Instead, she whispered under her breath, "Just one more day. I can survive one more day." As she passed the lockers, a boy named Eric stepped in front of her. He was one of Clara's loyal followers, always eager to impress. "Where are you going in such a hurry, little mouse?" he said, blocking her path. Lani froze, her throat tightening. "Please let me pass," she muttered softly. Eric smirked. "Or, what, you going to cry again?" He leaned closer, his mocking eyes searching for weakness. From behind him, Clara laughed even louder. "Look at her trembling. She is like a scared little rabbit." The hallway filled with their cruel amusement. Other students pretended not to notice. Some even chuckled under their breath. To them, it was just another performance of Clara and her group tearing down the weak. Lani's fists clenched inside her sleeves. Her nails dug into her palms until she could almost feel the sting. But she kept her head down, her silence feeding their superiority. Finally, the teacher's voice rang from the far end. "Enough of this, get to class." The bullies dispersed with mocking smiles. But Clara whispered as she passed Lani, "You will never be more than a loser." When the hallway cleared, Lani took a deep breath, blinking back the tears that blurred her vision. She made her way to the bathroom, locking herself inside a stall. Her reflection in the cracked mirror stared back with tired eyes. "Why do they hate me so much?" she whispered. "What did I ever do to deserve this?" Her voice trembled, but somewhere deep within, a small spark of anger flickered. It was faint, almost hidden beneath layers of pain, yet it burned. She pressed her palms against the sink, breathing heavily. Someday, she thought, someday, they will see me differently. Someday, they will regret every word and every laugh. The days dragged on with the same torment. Every corner of the school felt like a trap, waiting to humiliate her. In class, Clara would whisper cruel jokes, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Look at her hair, it is like she has never seen a comb." Her friends would laugh, as if it was the funniest thing in the world. During lunch, Lani often sat alone in the farthest corner of the cafeteria. She would unwrap the simple meal her mother prepared, only to have it targeted. One afternoon, Eric strolled by her table, snatched the sandwich from her hands, and tossed it to the floor. "Oops, guess it slipped." The cafeteria erupted with laughter, and Lani felt her face burn with shame. Her only refuge was the library, where silence protected her from cruelty. She would bury herself in books, reading stories of heroes who overcame pain, betrayal, and humiliation. Each page gave her a little strength, a whisper that reminded her she was not meant to stay broken forever. One evening, after another brutal day, she sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the ceiling. Her mother knocked softly and entered the room. "Lani, are you all right? You have been so quiet lately." Lani forced a smile that did not reach her eyes. "I am fine, Mom. Just tired from schoolwork." Her mother sat beside her and brushed a hand through her hair. "You are stronger than you think, my daughter. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise." The words lingered in her heart. For the first time, Lani realized that strength did not always come from fighting back immediately. Sometimes it came from enduring, from waiting for the right moment to rise. The very next day, as she walked through the crowded hallway, Clara pushed past her deliberately, spilling her books across the floor. The crowd snickered as Lani knelt to gather her things. Clara bent down and whispered with venom, "You will never escape being invisible. People like you are meant to be stepped on." Lani looked up into Clara's eyes. For the first time, she did not look away. Her gaze was steady, burning with a quiet fire. Clara blinked, caught off guard, and pulled back with a frown. Something shifted inside Lani. She did not know when or how, but she knew one thing. She would not be invisible forever. They would all see her one day, not as a victim, but as someone they could never touch again. That spark in her heart began to grow, turning her pain into fuel. The beginning of her transformation had already started. The following week, Lani walked into school with the same old clothes, and the same quiet steps. But something inside her felt different. She no longer wanted to shrink into the shadows. The memory of Clara's smirk echoed in her mind, but instead of piercing her with pain, it fueled her with determination. During gym class, the teacher announced a surprise relay race. Teams were chosen quickly, and of course, Clara and her friends ended up on one side, while Lani was reluctantly placed on another. Clara smirked across the gym, her voice carrying loud enough for everyone to hear. This will be easy. Nobody wants Lani slowing them down. Lani clenched her fists, but she refused to bow her head this time. She stood silently at the starting line, feeling the rough surface beneath her shoes. As the whistle blew, the race began. One by one, her teammates ran, passing the baton closer and closer to her. When it finally reached her hand, Clara's team was already ahead. The crowd chuckled, expecting her to stumble, to trip, to fail like always. But Lani's legs moved with surprising strength. She dashed forward, her heart pounding with every stride. She could hear Clara's voice from behind, mocking as always, but she did not let it sink in. She focused on the finish line, every step faster than the last. Gasps filled the gym as Lani began to close the distance. Her teammates shouted in disbelief, cheering her on. The energy surged through her veins like fire. She pushed harder, overtaking one runner, then another, until she was neck and neck with Clara herself. Clara's confident smile faltered. She glanced at Lani, shocked to see her determination. "No way," she muttered under her breath. With one final burst of energy, Lani crossed the line just a step ahead. The gym erupted with cheers. Not for Clara this time, but for the quiet girl no one had ever believed in. Breathless, Lani held the baton tight in her hand. For the first time, she felt power rushing through her chest, not weakness. Her teammates surrounded her, patting her shoulders. "That was amazing, Lani. I did not know you could run like that." Clara's face burned red with humiliation. She marched up to Lani, hissing so only she could hear. "Do not think this changes anything. You are still nothing." But Lani stood tall, her voice steady as she answered. "We will see about that." It was the first time she had spoken back, and Clara's stunned expression was worth more than any victory. Inside, Lani knew this was only the beginning. Her revenge would not come from cruelty, but from rising so high that none of them could ever drag her down again. After the relay race, Lani felt a strange shift in the air around her. For years she had been invisible, the girl no one cared to notice, unless it was to mock her. But now, even the smallest glance from her classmates carried something new. Curiosity, confusion, respect, though faint, had started to take root. Still, Clara refused to lose her throne. The humiliation of being defeated haunted her. One afternoon in class, while the teacher wrote equations on the board, Clara whispered loudly to her friends, "Do not get too excited. Rabbits can run fast, but they are still weak prey." The girls giggled, but the laughter was thinner than before. Some students shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Clara's words no longer carried the same unquestioned power. Later that day, Lani slipped into the library. She sank into her usual corner, but this time she was not hiding. She was planning. She opened a notebook, and instead of scribbling class notes, she wrote her thoughts. "I am tired of being their victim. If they think I am nothing, I will show them I am more." As she wrote, a voice interrupted. "I saw you run yesterday. It was incredible." Lani looked up to see a boy from her math class, Daniel, standing awkwardly near the shelf. He had never spoken to her before. She blinked, unsure how to respond. "Thank you," she said softly. Daniel smiled, genuine and kind. "You should not listen to them. You are stronger than they want you to believe." For the first time, someone outside her family had spoken to her with kindness. It planted another seed inside her heart. Maybe the world was not entirely against her. Maybe she could create a place where she belonged. The next morning, as she walked into school, she noticed fewer eyes mocking her, and more eyes simply watching. Clara, however, noticed too. Her jaw tightened as she whispered to Eric, "She thinks she is rising. We need to remind her where she belongs." That day during gym, Clara deliberately shoved Lani during basketball practice, sending her crashing to the floor. The whistle blew, but Clara feigned innocence. "Sorry, I did not see her there." Lani picked herself up slowly, her palms stinging. She looked straight into Clara's eyes, refusing to look away. "One day," she said calmly, "you will regret every time you pushed me down." For a moment, Clara faltered. The calm fire in Lani's voice unsettled her. The war between them had only just begun, but Lani was no longer afraid to fight it. The weeks passed, and the whispers about Lani began to change. Some students who once laughed at her now looked at her with curiosity. They had seen her run. They had seen her speak back to Clara, and it unsettled the balance of power in the school. Clara, however, refused to let go. Her pride would not allow it. One afternoon in the cafeteria, Lani sat quietly at her table when Clara and her friends approached. The room fell silent, as if everyone expected another cruel show. Clara leaned across the table, her eyes cold. "You think one lucky run makes you special. Lani, you are still the same pathetic girl who hides in the library." Lani looked up slowly, meeting her gaze. "Maybe I used to be pathetic, but not anymore." The crowd gasped softly. No one ever dared to challenge Clara so directly. Clara's smirk wavered for a second, but she quickly regained it. Brave words for someone who has nothing. Lani stood, her voice calm but strong. "I may have nothing now, but at least I do not waste my life tearing others down to feel important." The cafeteria buzzed with murmurs. Clara's eyes narrowed, and for the first time she had no clever response. She stormed off, her friends following behind with uneasy glances. After school, Eric cornered Lani near the gates. His tone was sharp, but his eyes betrayed uncertainty. "What are you trying to do, Lani Doe? You think you can humiliate Clara and just walk away unharmed?" Lani stared at him without fear. "I am not trying to humiliate anyone. I am just done being your victim." Eric scoffed, but his voice cracked slightly. "You are going to regret this." Lani walked past him, her steps firm. She no longer felt small. She no longer trembled under their words. Each confrontation was building her resolve. That night, she stood before her mirror at home, studying her reflection. Her eyes no longer looked empty. They glowed with a strength she had never noticed before. She whispered to herself, "I will rise. I will make them remember my name for the right reasons." In that moment, she knew her revenge was not about striking back with the same cruelty. It would be about proving her worth so greatly that Clara and her friends would choke on their own arrogance. She was not finished. She was only beginning. The tension in school grew heavier with each passing day. Clara tried harder to humiliate Lani, but the more she attacked, the less power her words seemed to hold. Students began to notice the cracks in her confidence, while Lani's quiet strength only became clearer. One morning, the teacher announced a debate competition. Teams were to be chosen, and the winners would represent the school in a regional contest. Clara immediately volunteered, confident she would be praised as always. To everyone's surprise, Lani raised her hand as well. The room fell silent. The teacher nodded. "Good. Competition will be healthy. Clara and Lani, you will face each other in the first round." Whispers spread quickly. A debate between Clara and the girl she always bullied. Students were eager to watch. Clara smirked across the room. "This will be easy." That evening, Lani stayed up late, researching and writing notes. Her hands trembled at times, but her heart refused to let her back down. She remembered every insult, every shove, every cruel laugh. This was her chance to speak, not just for herself, but for every quiet kid who had been silenced. The day of the debate arrived. The classroom was packed with students who wanted to see Clara crush her. Clara stepped up confidently, her words smooth but shallow. She relied on charm and arrogance, tossing glances at her friends who giggled at every line. Then it was Lani's turn. She stood tall, clutching her notes, but when she spoke, her voice was steady and clear. She spoke with passion, logic, and conviction. Her words painted images that drew the listeners in, her arguments sharp and undeniable. For the first time, her voice filled the room with power. As she finished, silence hung in the air, followed by an eruption of applause. Even students who once mocked her now cheered. The teacher smiled with pride. "That was excellent, Lani. Truly excellent." Clara's face turned pale. She tried to smile, but her lips shook. She had lost, not just the debate, but the control she once held over the school. Later, in the hallway, Clara approached Lani, her tone bitter. "Do not think this makes you better than me." Lani met her gaze calmly. "I do not need to be better than you. I just need to be the best version of myself." Clara froze, speechless. Around them, whispers rose, students already beginning to see the shift. Lani was no longer the weak girl in the corner. She was becoming a force no one could ignore. The days after the debate felt like stepping into a new world for Lani for the first time since she entered that school. People smiled at her in the hallway. Some offered greetings. Others whispered about how strong her voice had been. It was strange, almost unbelievable, but it warmed her heart. Daniel, the boy from her math class, walked beside her one afternoon. "You know, Everyone is still talking about that debate. You crushed Clara. Lani smiled faintly. I was not trying to crush anyone. I just wanted to be heard. Daniel nodded, his voice sincere. Well, you were, and people are finally listening. But Clara could not stand the attention shifting away from her. Every smile directed at Lani felt like a dagger. In desperation, she planned something crueler. She whispered to Eric and the other girls, if we cannot silence her with words, then we will break her in front of everyone. The opportunity came during a school talent showcase. Students were encouraged to perform music, dance, or any hidden skill. Lani hesitated at first, but Daniel encouraged her. You have a beautiful voice, Lani. Why do you keep hiding it? Her cheeks warmed. Singing had always been her secret escape, something she only did behind closed doors. But the thought of showing it terrified her. Yet the spark of courage burned again. Maybe it was time to stop hiding. Maybe this was another chance to rise. When her name was called, she stepped nervously onto the stage. The auditorium buzzed with whispers. Clara sat in the front row, arms crossed, waiting to watch her fail. The music began softly. Lani's hands shook, but when she opened her mouth, a pure, powerful voice filled the room. Her notes carried emotion, raw and real, touching every ear and every heart. The crowd fell silent, mesmerized. Even the teachers leaned forward, eyes wide with surprise. As the final note faded, the room erupted with thunderous applause. Students stood, clapping and cheering louder than ever before. Clara's face turned red with fury. She whispered sharply to her friends, she cannot keep stealing the spotlight. But nothing could erase what had just happened. Lani stood on stage, breathing heavily, tears in her eyes as she bowed. For once, the applause was hers. Not pity, not mockery, but genuine admiration. She whispered to herself under the roar of the crowd, this is only the beginning. The night after the showcase, Clara could barely sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard the thunder of applause for Lani. It ate away at her pride, leaving her restless and furious. By morning, she had already decided what she would do. If people admired Lani now, then she would destroy that admiration with one cruel strike. During lunch break, Clara and her friends spread a rumor through the cafeteria. They whispered into eager ears, twisting lies with poisonous words. Did you know Lani cheated in the debate? She copied her arguments from the internet. And that song she sang, it was not even her own. She only pretends to be talented. The rumor spread like wildfire. By the time Lani entered the cafeteria, dozens of eyes were already fixed on her, suspicious and cold. She froze under their gaze, her tray trembling in her hands. Clara stood from her table, loud enough for everyone to hear. Tell us, Lani, do you ever do anything real? Or is everything you do just stolen? The room went quiet. Lani's heart pounded. She wanted to scream that it was a lie, but the words caught in her throat. Clara smirked, feeling her control return. Then, unexpectedly, Daniel rose from his seat. That is not true, he said firmly. I helped Lani prepare for the debate. I saw her research for hours. And as for the song, I have heard her sing in the library when she thought no one was listening. That voice is hers. The cafeteria stirred with murmurs. Clara's smirk faltered, but she quickly snapped back. Of course he would defend her. He has a crush on her. Lani felt her cheeks heat, but she stepped forward, her voice clear. Believe what you want, but I know my own work, and I will not apologize for my efforts. Her calm strength silenced the room. For the first time, the rumor did not grow stronger. It began to crumble. Students looked at Clara with doubt, realizing her words no longer carried the weight they once did. Clara's hands clenched into fists under the table. No matter what I do, she whispered to herself, she keeps rising. Meanwhile, Lani sat quietly, her chest heavy but proud. She had faced the storm and refused to break. The admiration in Daniel's eyes and the whispers of support from others told her the truth. Clara's power was slipping away, and nothing could stop the shift that had already begun. Clara's pride was breaking apart, piece by piece. The more Lani shined, the more desperate she became. By now, the entire school had started to admire the quiet girl who had once been invisible. Clara felt the walls closing in on her, and in her desperation, she chose the cruelest plan yet. One Friday afternoon, Clara snuck into the teacher's office. With shaking hands, she slipped one of her old essays into Lani's folder, making it look like Lani had plagiarized. If the teachers believed it, Lani's reputation would shatter. She walked out with a wicked grin, certain this would end everything. The next morning, Lani was called to the principal's office. She sat nervously in front of the large desk as the principal placed the essay on the table. Lani, there are accusations that this is not your original work. Her heart dropped. No, that is not true. I worked on my essay for days. The principal frowned. This is serious. We will investigate. But if it is proven, there will be consequences. Tears burned Lani's eyes as she left the office. Clara stood nearby with her friends, pretending to be concerned. What a shame, she said loudly enough for others to hear. I guess some people cannot win without cheating. Daniel appeared by Lani's side, his voice full of determination. Do not worry, Lani. We will prove the truth. I believe in you. That evening, Daniel and Lani worked together in the library. They pulled out her notes, drafts, and even the books she had used for research. Piece by piece, they gathered evidence. Lani's trembling hands calmed as Daniel reassured her. They will see who you really are. On Monday, the truth was revealed. The teacher compared handwriting, drafts, and timestamps. It was clear Lani had written her essay honestly. The one Clara planted was exposed as an old paper she had submitted a year before. The room fell silent as the teacher turned to Clara. Do you have an explanation for this? Clara stammered, her face pale. I do not know how that happened. But the damage was done. Gasps filled the classroom as students looked at her with disgust. For years, she had been the queen of the school, but now her throne was collapsing beneath her. Lani sat quietly, her chest rising and falling. She did not smile, she did not gloat, but deep inside, she felt a powerful shift. The girl they once called weak had survived every attack. Clara's reign was crumbling, and the end was near. The scandal spread quickly through the entire school. Clara, once untouchable, was now whispered about in every corner. Students who once laughed at her cruel jokes now avoided her. Some even mocked her behind her back, calling her desperate and pathetic. For the first time, Clara walked through the hallways alone. Her friends had drifted away, afraid of sharing her downfall. The girl who had ruled with arrogance now felt the sting of isolation. Meanwhile, Lani's world was transforming. Teachers praised her determination. Classmates greeted her with genuine respect, and Daniel never left her side. She had become more than the quiet girl who was bullied. She had become an example of strength. One afternoon, Clara finally approached her. Her eyes were red, her shoulders slumped. She stopped in front of Lani, struggling to hold her voice steady. I never thought it would end like this. You were supposed to stay beneath me. Lani looked at her calmly. All those years you spent trying to break me only made me stronger. You gave me every reason to rise. Clara swallowed hard. Do you feel happy now, watching me fall? Lani shook her head. No, revenge is not about seeing you suffer. It is about proving that you cannot destroy me. And I have proved that. Clara's lips trembled. For a moment, she seemed as if she would apologize. But pride still clung to her heart. She turned away, walking down the hall where no one cared to follow. Lani stood tall, her chest filled with something far greater than anger. She had won, not by becoming cruel like Clara, but by refusing to stay broken. Every laugh, every insult, every humiliation had fueled her rise. That evening, during the school assembly, the principal called Lani to the stage. For outstanding courage, determination, and resilience, the award goes to Lani. The applause thundered through the auditorium. Students rose to their feet, cheering her name. Daniel smiled proudly from the crowd, clapping until his hands hurt. Lani stood under the bright lights, her heart heavy with emotion. She had once cried in dark bathrooms, whispered to herself in cracked mirrors, and begged for the pain to stop. Now she stood tall, her voice steady as she spoke. Thank you. Not long ago, I was invisible. But today, I know that no one is truly powerless. You just have to keep standing, no matter how many times they try to push you down. The crowd roared with approval. And in that moment, Lani felt it fully. The bullied girl was gone. She had transformed into someone untouchable. Her revenge was complete.